How y'all doing? It's Gary, the guy in the pink shirt. If you haven't met me yet, I'd love to say hi to you at the next convention. Or, I'm not hard to find. I'm the only guy wearing pink. I am the 2019 National Instructor of the Year, the Avidyne National Training Provider. I got a bunch of hours as an ATP and a double master instructor. And, the reason I'm really good at the Avidyne IFD and the Bendix-King AeroNav series is I just get paid to do it every day. I've taught it for a long time. And I do private training for people like you in your airplane all over the world. I've trained clients from Alaska all the way to Australia. One of the most common questions I get, you can always email me questions anytime for free over at avidynetraining.com. But one of the most common questions I get by phone, by email, and I see on the Facebook group is, what the heck is a gap en route? Well, we're going to talk about what a gap is. We're going to talk about what causes gaps, how to prevent them. Connecting or clearing it may not always be what you want, and some things that will prevent you from ever clearing it, they're just built in. So a gap is really called a discontinuity. A discontinuity in a flight plan or in a time stream or in a physical sequence, it's all the same thing. It's a distinct break. There's a hole where the Avidyne and Bendix-King AeroNav systems don't know what to do next. And 90% of the time, they're caused by the pilots who put the garbage in. The Avidyne IFD series is the greatest flight management system ever invented for general aviation. It's much smarter than a basic GA system. The Bendix-King AeroNav system is the same box. So Avidyne IFD and Bendix-King AeroNav, it's the best thing that's ever happened to GA. It's much smarter than a basic level GPS. But the problem is it's so smart that if you tell it to do something wrong, it'll go, okay, and do it. I need y'all to pretend you're a computer for just half a second. Does this make sense if you're a computer? To go to the direct center of an airport, we're going to leave Decatur on the right. We're going to fly GPS direct to the center of Bridgeport, KXBP, and then we're going to leave and do an instrument approach. Does that make sense? Would you create a flight plan like this in ForeFlight? Would you file KLUD direct to Bridgeport, then to the initial approach fix, and then back to the airport? No, doesn't make sense. Unfortunately, that's what a lot of really smart pilots that have not taken a mastery level of training will do on the boxes. If we tell an IFD 550 to start out at Decatur, go GPS direct to another airport, and then we load a procedure, that's what you've done. You've created a gap en route. You broke the flight plan because you told it to go to the airport and then leave and do an instrument procedure. And the way you know you did it wrong is it looks like this while you're flying. It'll warn you, hey, there's a gap en route ahead. And at this point, everybody calls tech support or emails me and says, hey, I loaded the procedure, but it never activated because you didn't tell it to. So if you make a mistake and you accidentally put garbage in a computer and you build in your own gaps, there's a couple different ways to get rid of it. You can connect or close the gap en route. You just highlight gap and hit connect in the bottom left. Or you can also hit the clear button. Or you can highlight any initial approach fix or any intermediate fix and hit direct to that in the procedure. Or you can simply activate the leg to final. All of those will do it. In this case, I'm just going to connect the gap en route, and boom, we fixed our problem. But that's not the way you want to fly. You don't want to build in problems and then go back and clean it up en route. So what I want you to do is I want you to change the way you flight plan a little bit. So every air traffic controller will tell you, unless you're in very busy Charlie or Bravo airspace, they really don't want you on Victor Airways. Listen, if you're in Bravo and Charlie airspace, you should always use SIDS. You should always use stars. And we're going to talk about those coming up. Outside of SID stars, it's really best just to go GPS direct to the initial approach fix of the procedure you want, which means you need to know what procedure you want before you ever file the flight plan. A lot of people at national conventions will say, well, Gary, I don't know what procedure I'm going to shoot till I listen to the ATIS. Boy, are they behind the airplane. If you don't know what procedure you're going to shoot until you're 20 minutes out, you are decision overload and you're way behind the curve. I don't shoot an approach based on the ATIS. I shoot an approach based on the forecast weather and the procedure I want to shoot. I would never shoot an ILS if an LPV was available because LPV is much more accurate. I've done this for a long time, and I got to tell you, I've only ever had to change my procedure once in the last 8 years of teaching, and it's because somebody geared up on my runway and I just had to sidestep to another. So if you get a standard weather briefing ahead of time, you should know what procedure you're going to shoot before you ever file the flight plan. So what I want you to do is I actually want you to look at the weather and file it just like this. If you're not inside Bravo or Charlie airspace and using SIDS or STARS, I want you to file GPS direct to the initial approach fix of the procedure that you want, not to the airport. You file GPS direct to the IAF, then to the airport. And you're going to program the flight plan the same way. So I'm going to go ahead and file this with the FAA and see if they let me go GPS direct to an initial approach fix for the few doubters out there. I've got my ICAO set up. Going to hit File. Flight plan's filed. Going to wait just a second to make sure that the FAA says, okay, we got it. They got it. Then I'm going to scroll down and see if I got my route. And you're going to see that if I just scroll that screen up, you're going to see that the filed and the expected route are the same. ATC really will let you go GPS direct to an initial approach fix. Promise you it's true. So I want to program the flight management system in the same order that I created the flight plan. Origin, en route, initial approach fix, then the airport, then I load the procedure. So what do I mean by that? Well, let me show you how to do it on a 550. I filed GPS direct to the initial approach fix, not to the airport, and I'm going to load the flight plan the same way. Once again, I'm going to program the FMS in this order. Origin, en route, initial approach fix, airport, then load the procedure. Now, in this particular example for brevity, there is no en route waypoints. So watch what happens if we program it correctly. Origin, KLUD, found it. Waypoint, ZDAX, enter, waypoint, then Bridgeport. Now I'm going to load the procedure from ZDAX, which is already in my flight plan, and booyah, no gap in route, and the approach will automatically self-activate once I get there. So let me take the radar off the map screen and zoom out a little bit, and you can see that we've eliminated the gap.
$500.
We started our simulator, and look at that. No gap in route. It'll even do the procedure turn for me automatically. Now, sometimes it's not a pilot programming error. Sometimes it's not GIGO. Sometimes gaps are built in. So almost all standard terminal arrival routes end in what's called a manual termination or a radar vector only leg. So you can see after we sat, just expect radar vectors to final and maintain a heading of 130 until we tell you. Well, the Avidyne doesn't know when ATC is going to clear you for an approach, so that is a manual termination that's going to have a gap between that and the instrument approach, and there's no way to get rid of it. Some departures, SID standard instrument departures, will also include a manual termination or gap leg. And if we depart runway 31 at Oklahoma City, there's a heading of 311. Same thing, just expect radar vectors to the first waypoint at GLOPS. So a lot of people will tell you that if you see a gap in route, that you should always just highlight it and hit connect or hit clear. Well, that's not really a good habit. I have no problem with connecting a gap because I programmed it wrong, but sometimes connecting a gap can actually make things worse. So remember garbage in, garbage out? Do you always want to just get rid of gaps? Well, let's try a different route. Let's leave Oklahoma City, and we'll just file KOKC GPS direct to KLUD at 5,000 feet, and I want to leave in 90 minutes. Actually, I'm getting hungry. I want to leave in 30 minutes. Remember, always use a departure if there's available, so I'm going to select procedure departure. And if I zoom in, it looks like that muddy 3 is going my way, so I'm going to hit muddy 3. Moose looks like a good place to get out, add route. I'm always going to look for an arrival if there's a possible arrival. Zooming in, boy, there's lots of them as well. And I think the Matza 9 is good just because it's pink. And look, hey, we were already using muddy, so let's just hit muddy. Perfect. If I file that, I guarantee I'll get it. There is that manual termination leg. Does anybody see the problem yet? Look at the nav log for ForeFlight. Does anybody see the problem yet? If we put this in an AeroNav or an Avidyne IFD, and I happen to have a Genesis S-Tech autopilot, it will, when it gets to Moose, turn around and go back to muddy because we put the same leg in twice. So let me show you how to make this happen and make it worse in flight. This is what I don't want you to do. I don't want you to always just clear gaps without thinking about it. So let's put the flight plan in. Origin, KOKC. I want to hit departure, muddy 3. Moose. Want to depart runway 31. Then I want to use the big knob and scroll all the way down to the right to put my insert cursor at the bottom. I'm going to enter a waypoint. I'm going to put in my destination, KLUD. And then I'm going to load the arrival at Decatur. And we pick the Matza 9, starting at muddy. Now if I scroll back up, there's going to be a gap in route. And a lot of people will go, well, we should clear that. Touch the gap in route, and then hit connect. Well, if I do that, do you see how I've put muddy Moose in twice? This is what's going to happen, folks. If you're not paying attention and you just randomly hit connect without looking at the consequences, we're flying along, we're all perfectly happy, we're on our way to Moose. Now, what I'd really like to do is continue on the Matza 9 arrival, so my next waypoint should be Acme. But you notice there's no barber stripe anywhere? That's because the barber stripe is hidden under the current, and my autopilot, instead of continuing on the arrival, directly violate an IFR clearance. That is a pilot deviation, and will turn me around and take me back towards Oklahoma City. Now listen, not only is Fort Worth Center going to want to know what you're doing, you're going to want to know what's going on, right? So just hitting connect is not always the best way. A better way to do it in the new software 10.2.3, which is current as of this video, is to simply remove the end of the departure. You can't remove the beginning of an arrival, but you can remove the end of a departure. So you see how Moose, muddy Moose, gap, muddy Moose. If I simply highlight the top Moose, the end of the muddy 3 arrival, and delete it, the Avidyne would go muddy, muddy. That doesn't make sense and will automatically delete the second muddy. So remember, when you pay for the best flight management system out there, if you simply get rid of that, boom, It will fix it for you. This is what makes it so much smarter than a basic level GPS. Now, what about the ones we can't get rid of? The vector only or manual terminations at the end of an arrival. So our current flight plan says, well, after Acme, that's our current leg, we should go from Bowie down to Matza. That's our upcoming leg. There's our barber stripe. And then we should fly a radar vector of 130 till they tell us. Well, I don't want to do that. There's going to be a gap in route on the Avidyne, but that's not what I want to do. Why would I go past the airport and then come back? What I really want to do is say, okay, well, our current leg goes to an initial approach fix. I'd rather just start the approach. So let me show you how to do that on the IFD or the AeroNav system. Flying along, I'm talking to Fort Worth Center, and I'm going to say, now you need to give them heads up. You got to tell them before you get there. Fort Worth Center, Stationair 49er41 Foxtrot request. What you want? 49er41 Foxtrot would like to start the RNAV 17 Decatur full stop at the Bowie VOR. That's UKW if you didn't know what Bowie was. At the Bowie VOR, full stop with the current weather and NOTAMs. And they'll go, approved as requested. It's already in my flight plan. So now I just got to tell my FMS how to do that. So remember, FMS means push the FMS button. So if I zoom out on the map, it's going to show you that radar vector that I don't want to fly, right? So to change the flight plan, I want to push the FMS button, highlight the second UKW, the initial approach fix, hit the direct to button, and then hit the enter button twice. Now I'm going to the UKW that was the initial approach fix, and I have self-armed the approach. Now, it still seems a little out of the way. What I'd really like to do, because, you know, guy in the pink shirt, GPS expert, I would rather just cut the corner and go straight to Wiser, which is the intermediate fix. So I'd really like to just do that and take the shortcut. I can start it in an intermediate fix as long as my turn to final is less than 90 degrees. It's part of my IFR series. So same thing. Hey, Fort Worth Center, Stationair 49er41 Foxtrot request. What you want this time? Well, I'd like to start the RNAV 17 full stop Decatur at Wiser, Whiskey, India, Sierra Oscar Romeo. That's the intermediate fix, and I'm going to be full stop today with the current weather and NOTAMs. And they're going to say, cleared as requested. Okay. So as I'm flying along, I just push FMS, highlight Wiser, which is part of the RNAV, hit direct to, enter, enter, and look at that. I've gotten the shortcut, and again, self-arm the approach, and it will self-activate when I get there. Listen, if you want to be a true master, not just know the minimums, come on over and visit me. We do in-flight training. I will come to you, or you can bring your airplane to beautiful North Texas. We do ground schools all over the country, and we have mastery level video training, not just intro videos, but a full in-depth mastery series. And all of that information can be found at avidynetraining.com. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being a professional pilot. And thank you for believing in mastery, not minimums. I'll see you all next time. I'm Gary, the guy in the pink shirt, Reeves.